welcome to my channel. In today's video, I will be discussing the key features, issues, and outcome of the Siege of Antwerp in 1584. In doing so, we will be exploring the factors that influenced this battle to include defensive warfare, sustainment operations, and naval strategy. But before we dive in, we need to understand the greater context of this engagement and what it represents in the development of warfare and the key principles of war. The Siege, or Battle of Antwerp, was one of many during the Dutch Revolt, or otherwise known as the 80 Years' War. It can be summarized as a series of wars and skirmishes between the Dutch and the Spanish over the matter of independence. Prior to the 16th century, the various provinces of the Netherlands were never under unified rule. Up until then, they were loosely controlled by the Dukes of Burgundy, with a composition of countries and private territories. Unification only seemed possible if the customs and the liberties of provinces were targeted by either an outside force or by a centralization of rule from within. Under Habsburg rule, the 17 provinces of the Netherlands, despite their disunity, more or less united and began to take action as a precursor to the revolt after Emperor Charles V united the Netherlands with the Pragmatic Sanction of 1549. This outlined the terms for successive rule by the administrative units of the Habsburg family under a unified Netherlands, and set the stage for Philip II of Spain to assume control of the 17 provinces of the Netherlands after Emperor Charles' abdication in 1555. In a nutshell, provinces under this sanction would have had to trade their liberties in exchange for regulation and expansionism, which certainly did not align with their interest, as they viewed themselves as separate, self-governing entities. The Battle of Antwerp lasted from July 1584 to August 17, 1585. At the time, Antwerp was not only the focal point of the Dutch revolt, it was also flourishing with culture and served as the economic powerhouse and primary point of mercantile activity in Northern Europe. However, under the rule of Philip II, Antwerp would see itself reduced and not return to its former mercantile glory for another 200 years. With widespread attempts to convert the populace to Catholicism, the Spanish effectively forced the migration of thousands of merchants and craftsmen away from Antwerp. Many of these people relocated to cities such as Rotterdam or Amsterdam. The catalyst for this engagement, arguably, is referred to as the Spanish Fury. As Spanish control extended its influence up to the southern provinces, the logistical requirements of sustaining their occupation became increasingly more difficult. This would eventually lead to the aforementioned catalyst, as the Spanish army would find itself unable to provide its soldiers with pay. On November 4, 1576, the Spanish Fury occurred. In their mutiny, Spanish soldiers resorted to plundering and decimating the city of Antwerp. Historical records indicate that thousands of citizens were killed, along with hundreds of houses being burnt to the ground. Not only was this event the largest massacre in Belgian history, it also enraged the people of Antwerp, bringing their proverbial dog into the fight. In 1579, the city joined the Union of Utrecht, which unified the northern provinces of Netherlands, as well as making it the capital of the Dutch Revolt. So in response to this, King Philip places General Alessandro Farnese, the Duke of Parma, who had earned his reputation fighting the Ottomans along the Mediterranean, under command of the Army of Flanders. He intended to regain control of portions of the Netherlands, including Flanders, Brabant, and the United Provinces. The Army of Flanders, which had been well equipped and stocked, had a stronghold of approximately 40,000 men. This army in composition was comprised of conscripted soldiers. They were multinational and often brought into service during campaigns. The Army of Flanders is often considered to be the first professional standing army for its military organization and its logistics operations to sustain a fight. One asset used by this army allowed for the sustainment of its fighting forces in the Netherlands. It also served as a trade route between the northern territories of Italy and the Spanish Netherlands. This route that I mentioned is known as the Spanish Route. Although it would take less time to travel by sea between the two countries, it was often safer to travel by land through this route, as it would avoid devastating attacks from the English, French, and the Dutch in the English Channel. Alessandro Farnese understood that he needed to consolidate his efforts and gain control of the Netherlands piece by piece. The first stage in doing this involved encircling fortifications around the city of Antwerp, as well as constructing a bridge across the River Scheldt, effectively cutting the northern territories from the fight. Most believed it to be impossible, in part because of rebel agitation and the severity of the colder months. Forts were also constructed at intervals along the Scheldt. In addition to seeing the conduct of siege or defensive warfare, we can also observe some of the logistical challenges that Farnese tried to mitigate. By staging forts at intervals, it allowed for the hasty movement of supplies and for a tactical movement based on mission criteria. The Dutch, in response to the construction of the fortified bridge blocking the Scheldt, flooded the lands adjacent to the river, which were occupied by Spanish forts and settlements. This did not produce the desired effect the Dutch were looking for, as it merely agitated the Spanish. They remained in position. The Dutch rebels were simply no match with their oar boats and small cannons. This meant that they would resort to a fight of disruption or provocation, rather than a large-scale conflict. The next strategy the Dutch implemented involved steering burning ships or hellburners into the pontoon bridge. This had devastating effects, having killed over 800 Spaniards. Despite this, Spanish occupation remained, and the Dutch would eventually lose their will to fight. This led to their surrender on August 17, 1585. General Farnese was surprisingly moderate with the terms of the surrender. His men would not ransack and loot the city. However, soldiers were stationed there permanently to prevent attacks from other forces. The bridge was left blocking the Scheldt, which continued to inhibit trade. This concludes the siege of Antwerp.